living it up, making life juicy. I have a wonderful guest. First of all, I'm Ingrid, and then I have a wonderful guest, Yvonne Kaye, Dr.YvonneKaye, which has a story, and you just have a very colorful life and past. Tell us first what you are doing currently.
I'm a thanatologist, which is a bereavement specialist.
Oh, good.
Which
explain
is
that because
yes, that's my heart work.
okay.
I'm also an addictionist. I'm an interfaith minister without a religion.
Okay.
And I suppose in some way I'm a humorist because I have such respect for humor and where it belongs in grief and tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I just hang out and do whatever I'm asked to do.
Like at Dancing Timbers, which is where we are
Yes,
today.
indeed.
Kim Krausberg's home, new home.
Which is beautiful.
It is. We got the grand tour. So I have some of your books that you've written, but let's start at the beginning. How on earth? You're from England.
I am. I'm half English, half Irish. So I get in fights with myself, but I always win.
Okay. Good thing you win.
Indeed.
What was going on in England when you were growing up?
Well, I was born in 1933 when a lot of the trauma was happening in Germany. That's when it began. And then in 1939, Churchill declared war. And then from then on, I have this history of being evacuated and going back, and being evacuated and going back, and so on. And one of the things that's really was a part of my journey was watching the grown-ups when we were bombed out. We were bombed out twice and homeless. And the grown-ups that just listened and took us in. If they had a roof, they took us in. And I remember at 8 years old looking at those people and saying, I want to be like that when I grow up. So I am. And I believe that in mentors, and I have so many mentors. Never stop learning.
You do hospice work as well, right?
I do it I more work with the families after the death. I was trained by Dame Cicely Saunders, yes, who was the founder of hospice when I was 18.
That's pretty
in
amazing.
London. Yeah,
That's very amazing.
And so it's a strange thing that I'm around death most of the time, and yet I'm not a depressed person. And I see the beauty in a lot of it and the way that people respond.
Yeah. Well, death is so final too. You know, they're not coming back.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to go on. We have to.
Yes, that's right. Well, there's a phrase that I really like, not mine, which is, overcoming is not the same as getting over. And I believe that to be true.
Wow.
When we're faced with tragedy, and I've had many, many losses in my life, that you get up and you go on, but you're never going to forget. You're never going to forget those people and the love. And my cousin Lawrence, who was in the Royal Air Force, was a dispatch rider, and he was like my big brother. And he was murdered.
Oh.
And I have that sense of Lawrence in my heart all the time. If I get worried about something or scared, that he's right there. And that's another whole story.
Start telling stories. I want to hear them. They're just so fascinating.
Well, with Lawrence, actually, I was 10 years old, and I was asleep, and one night he came into my room and tickled my toe and said, I wanted to say goodbye because I'm going on a dangerous trip now. So be good to your mother, which every 10-year-old wants to hear.
Right.
And then I went downstairs the next morning. He kissed me goodbye. I went downstairs the next morning, and the whole family is there, and they're crying and carrying on. And I said, what's happened? And they told me about Lawrence. At the time, he was there whittling my toe. Well, of course, they didn't want to hear that.
Wait, hold on.
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
So if I get in a situation where I feel powerless, I get my toe wiggled.
Wow.
And that's how I am now, that I'm not afraid to say those things, where a lot of people are, and I think they miss an opportunity to get some kind of joy or comfort. You know, their question goes straight up in the brain.
Well, I can't believe you just brought that up, because I was thinking, I was going to ask you, like, what about spirits and what about people, you know, always being with us and, you know, talking, and then you just go right into it. So that was, you're in my mind.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's a bit scary.
Sorry. So, okay, so that's so fascinating about England, and that just must have been devastating.
Yes.
Just to have everything bombed.
Well, yes, 2 of our houses we were bombed out of, and then the 3rd one was kind of shattered, but we could still stay there.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, like every tragedy, the people are wonderful. And so one of my philosophies in life is, let's be wonderful without a tragedy.
Oh boy, yeah.
And I still have PTSD from that time. You know, if I'm warned there's going to be fireworks, I'm good. But if I don't know,
wow,
and the sirens just keep me frozen. And the thing is that I've just accepted that and said that's part of what it is, which helps me to help people who have PTSD. Because I know, I get it. I'll give you an example of recently where I had an episode that was horrendous when they took the children at the border. Well, that would have been me. If Hitler had decided to come across the English Channel rather than go after the Russians, I would have been there, or in another even. So that's the kind of thing that just made me completely rigid. But I acknowledge it now, and that's what I help people, acknowledge that what it is, and then you continue.
I think she came to help you.
Oh, they do. I believe in
sensed.
animals, absolutely.
Right. Aww.
But I think we underestimate the healing power of laughter. We really do. People not laughing at, but laughing with. And if I go to, let's say, a meeting of the Compassionate Friends, which is for the children who died, when I go into that meeting, before the meeting, everybody's talking and laughing because they feel safe. In those support groups, they feel safe. People aren't going to question them and make ridiculous remarks, as they do.
Yeah, or laugh.
But laughing with is so powerful.
Wow. So you were talking earlier, we were palling around with Edie, well, who got stuck in the mud.
And didn't she get stuck?
We had quite the adventure before starting to tape. And Kim, and you were saying that you had spoken to school children.
Yes, yes.
About your experiences. Tell us about that.
These were the children in Perkiomen West Middle School, and they had studied the Holocaust, which I always add that thing that never happened. Yeah, I get very sarcastic sometimes. Anyway, they said to their teachers, what happened with children in other countries? And my friend Lee, who is a counsellor there, asked, would you come and talk to them? And I did. And it was amazing. These 11 and 12-year-olds. And halfway through, I asked them, what kind of modern literature do you think I relate to? And immediately they said Harry Potter. I'm a Harry Potter freak.
Yeah.
And I brought my Hermione's wand with me. And I gave them the wand and I said, now silently I want you to think of something you wish for and just pass the wand all around. And I got these incredible letters from these children. Not, dear Dr. Kaye, thank you for being here, but things like, it was so wonderful to hear someone who actually lived this, not read a book or watched a film.
Right.
And the others were, because we were very hungry with rationing during that period of time. And one child wrote to me, she said, when I went to the cafeteria for lunch, I was very careful just to take what I needed. So I knew they heard all these things. Right. And I'd love to get hold of J.K. Rowling, and in touch with her and say, this is what your books have done for these children.
Yes.
She's a tough one to reach, but I keep trying.
Right.
I just want to send her a letter
Yeah,
telling
oh,
her about
sure.
how those books. And I asked them, well, why do you think that is the case? And they said, well, the people were cruel to him, and he was away from his parents, and you know,
Right, the step-parents
whatever.
were cruel,
Yes.
and, you know, which
That's
happens.
right. Well, yes, because I was sent away 3 times, and the 3rd time I was in like a little farm thing, and they didn't talk to me for 9 months.
Oh my
They
God.
didn't want me there, so the children didn't talk, they didn't talk.
Oh my God.
But I used to make myself sick so I could get back to London.
Oh.
to the West
So why
Side.
didn't they send you off with your parents too?
Well, my mother wouldn't leave. She was a member of a huge family, and they all went, but they didn't take me. So at that time, the government said the children have to go, and they have apologised since for doing that, because that was one of the worst decisions they could possibly have made.
Right. Right.
So one day I had a label put on me in a little case, and I was put on the bus. My mother didn't say why, didn't say goodbye.
Oh,
I don't want to
I'm
get
so
into my
sorry.
dysfunctional family. That takes another year.
I'm so sorry. How
Yes.
horrible.
But you know, I believe that everything that happened to me has become a lesson. With the work that I do,
Mm.
I'm grateful that I have that understanding.
Right. Right.
Really helps.
So you've written 3 books.
A long time ago.
That doesn't matter. They're still, I'm sure you can still find them. They're out of
Yes.
print, but you can still find them.
Yes.
And she's given me 3. Just so happy. Oh, ooh, yes, yes. Get excited, sorry. 366 Encouragements for Prosperity. Keys to the Treasure Within by Yvonne Kaye.
That was the first. This is the first.
Dr. Yvonne Kaye.
Mm-hmm.
This one's the first, The
Yeah.
Child That Never Was. Grieving Your Past to Grow into the Future.
That's the people who didn't have a childhood, like me. And sometimes I would go to a training and they would say, let's do a guided imagery. You're back in your childhood. And I would say, no,
Oh my
I'm
God.
not going there.
Yeah, what a nightmare.
Yes. So, I mean, and actually I'm thinking of another book to say, that happened then, how did I get here?
Right.
Which would help, I think. You know, I'm dedicated to women, and I think it would help a lot.
And speaking of your PhD,
Yes.
well, we have one more book, so let me just finish
Okay.
that. This is really important. Credit, Cash, and Codependency. How the way you were raised affects your decisions about money. Oh boy. That's deep.
Unfortunately, it's my life story again.
Yeah. Speaking of rationing.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God, yes.
Okay, so where were we? You were going to go back. We were going to, oh nuts, I
You
lost my
asked-
train of
no,
thought.
you were asking about the PhD.
Yes. Okay, so you have 4 children
I do,
and you raised them by yourself.
virtually.
You were a
Yes.
single parent.
Well, I feel when I think back on my marriage at that time,
Mhm.
I think I was a single parent from birth.
Okay, yeah.
And I've got lots of stories. You don't want to go into that one. So,
Go ahead.
yes, they were
We have time.
They
We're
weren't
good.
babies, fortunately. They were early teens. Well, one was 12 when I got. That's a great story. When we were going to celebrate 25 years, I didn't get it. And he asked me, what would you like? It's a silver wedding. Well, he never given me anything. So I said, a divorce, please. And I don't know where that voice came from. I don't know where that voice came from. But that
Oh
was
my God.
freedom from that moment on.
Oh my God.
Freedom. So, at that time, I didn't really have any money. he had all that.
Right.
So I worked full time and I went to school. And then for my master's, I was very lucky because nobody really knew a lot about grief. So I was able to work my way through my master's. I taught it. I taught my master's.
Oh my God.
And then the PhD, it was all done weekends, nights, and working full time.
With the 4 kids.
Yes.
Wow. As a single parent. That's
Yes.
pretty amazing. Oh, look, I'm leaving trash around.
Oh
Sorry.
dear.
Get excited.
The
Sorry,
two,
Cam.
the 2 older ones were virtually on their own. My 2 sons were with me. But I really had to deal with them all the way through, you know, to be a parent and
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Which I was happy to do.
Wow.
Yes, very happy to do. Sippy,
Please,
sippy.
please, go right ahead. I'm just stunned. So the work that you do now,
Yes.
tell us about some of the, this is just, it was just devastating to hear this, and I don't know how you process this. I know you were saying, but you were talking about these, the parents maybe of a child who was murdered by another parent.
Yes.
And, you know, I was saying, you know, I worked hospice and I just steer clear of, you know,
Yes.
that's a safe zone, you know. That's not a safe zone that you're in.
No, no.
And I just don't know how do you do that? How do you?
I didn't have a lot of experience with the other parent. Just a few.
Well, I would hope they're behind bars and,
yes.
you know,
But
out of
I-
society.
Indeed. But I do have a lot of children that were murdered by strangers. Lots and lots of stories that are heartrending. And how I deal with it is I never ever tell them how I feel. That I know how they feel. It's such an insulting thing to do.
Right.
Because
right.
I don't know. But I tell them, any kind of bereaved parent, I tell them right from the start, I can do 2 things. I cannot do 2 things. I can't bring your child back. And I wouldn't even try to take away your pain because that would be disrespectful.
Right.
Anything else? And I've seen some of these videos working with people where sitting in a circle and nothing. Some of mine ran into the bathroom and threw up, others got on my lap, needed to be touched healthily. And so I would say 90% of what I do is listening. Really.
Yeah.
I go to the meetings and I'm available, but it's so earth-shattering to have that situation. And then several of them have gone to court, only to see the perpetrator smiling smugly at them.
Oh.
And it's just a nightmare. And then the other one that's heartrending is that I work with parents who've lost children by suicide or overdose. We have a special group only for families and friends who've lost their loved ones to opioid poisoning, I call it.
Yeah.
And we meet twice a month there at Aldi Doylestown with my colleague Jodie Rosenblum. She's off for a few months right now, but it's the challenge with things like that, with the suicide of a child and the overdose. People say such utterly cruel things that even after all, and I've been doing this since 1974, even at that time make me gasp that I can't believe these words are coming out of people's mouths.
Right.
So what I like to do, and this is a future thing, I want to work with people who are bereaved therapists or counsellors to get them into this really traumatic stage, to teach them how to do that. There's a lot of grief counsellors, but there aren't a lot that do what I do. And we need, unfortunately, we need a lot more of what's
Right.
happening in the world today.
Right.
Mhm.
It seems suicide has just become so, like, just so prevalent.
Mhm.
I mean, and then it's just kind of getting accepted when it's, you know,
It's brutal.
it is.
And
I
I
mean,
have-
you look at the stars who have done, like Robin Williams
yes,
and
yes.
Anthony
Well,
Bourdain
you know
and
what? People don't recognise mental health issues. There's such stigma still about that. I mean, there's so much depression and anxiety that people say, pull yourself together. Well, I'm sorry, that's the mental illness. And it
Right.
needs help. I have it in my family. I know what it's like, and it's terrifying that people just ignore this or mock it even, as
Right.
we've had experience of that. But it has to be recognised. This stigma has got to go away. It's just unwelcome, in my field anyway, that people just brush it aside and think that people have control over it. If you have a mental illness,
Mhm.
you need psychiatric help.
yeah.
And people won't go for help because there's such shame and guilt.
Which is astounding that that's still going on.
Oh, my son writes about it constantly on Facebook. He goes through it very open with it, and he has a responsible job as well, and he's helped so many people just by being open. Before, when we started, as I told you, my life's an open book.
Yeah.
Anything that would help someone. And Daniel's just the same. And we both believe in this, that, you know, if he's not talking about mental illness, he's added to the stigma.
Right.
You can say, look at me, I do all these things, that I have it. And I think that's astonishing. And people relate to that, because he does a lot with humour,
Mhm.
like I do, so they look at him and they say, are you kidding?
They don't expect him to be
No,
depressed because he is
no,
laughing.
no.
There's another aspect that I'd like you to talk about, is how do you incorporate the laughter in the laughing into your sessions?
With bereaved people?
Mhm.
Well, you know, it's amazing when they get comfortable, some of the stories they'll tell of what happened with their children at one time, or their loved one, whatever.
Mhm.
And even in that group that we do for opioid poisoning, that overdose, we laugh a lot. And the reason is it's because they feel safe. If we're talking about AA, NA, GA, all the 12-step programs, people will use humour because they feel safe. No one's going to judge them.
Right.
So usually it comes up sometimes, if I feel comfortable enough, I'll tell them a funny story that happened with me, with a client.
Mhm.
My Rosemary story, which is hilarious. And I encourage them to speak whatever. There's no boundaries. There's nothing that isn't acceptable in those groups. I have a lot of friends who are bereaved mothers, and they have no filter. And one of my dreams is to get them all in a restaurant together and just sit and listen.
Okay.
And when I say no filter, I'm not kidding. I have one that every other word is obscene.
All
And
right.
she said to me, I've noticed something about you. And I said, what's that? And she said, you don't curse. And I said, first of all, you're not at home with me and the cats. So you don't know.
So there is a place.
But
Okay.
I do have a large vocabulary that you might like to have, you know, that you can put another word in there. And I mean, every one of them, if you met every one of them, you wouldn't believe what they were going through.
No.
And of course they can relate to one another, and I'm very much in favour of that, having groups that people can relate
Yeah.
to one another. I mean, I'm very honoured, I feel very honoured that they trust me. But I'm not going to tell them I know how they feel, because I don't.
Yeah.
I've got a pretty good idea, but I don't have that hole in my heart.
Right.
I have other holes in my heart for other people, but not that.
Yeah.
And people really have got to learn to respect that. I was telling you and Kim before that my new title is Maverick.
I like
And
that.
I'm very comfortable in that, because I'm going to go after people who don't treat people who have a disease properly. You know, I say with alcoholics and addicts, do you think this is a disease? And they say yes. I say, well, it's time we started treating it like one. It's not a punitive thing.
Right.
And so people need to be encouraged to follow what's in their heart. And with all my professions, you have to have a passion for those things, or you just can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I had
And you
a-
have to love people too. You have to care.
we have to know that they can do things that they don't think they can. Because I tell the people when I'm working with the residents at times about guilt and shame. I ask them, who has guilt and shame? And the majority of them people.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, what a waste of time. They're not expecting that. It's a waste of time. All the time you feel guilt and shame what you did in the past is taking away a positive aspect of what you can do in the future, one day at a time. I've lived that, I believe in it, I know lots of people who are still living it, and it's crucial to one's own stability.
So no more guilt or shame.
No.
But I want to hear the Rosemary story, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, her name was Rosalie, sorry, and she was a very vital woman, 70-year-old woman.
Mm-hmm.
And she was one of these people that would hustle. You know, we're going to go to York for today, let's go. I didn't know her. Her daughter was in a rebrief group with me after 9/11, with her partner and so on. And so, I would only meet her in Giant.
Oh wow! All right.
One day, in her apartment, she was getting something out of the cupboard and she turned quickly and became a quadriplegic.
Oh my God!
So she was in the nursing home for quite a long time. She's okay.
She's
She's
fine. Okay.
She's being compassionate.
She's the star right
Yes,
now.
she is. And so the long story short, she said to this person, her daughter, I want to see that English woman. So I went to see her.
Me? Yes.
So I went to see her. She was in this apartment in northeast Philadelphia, and I went to see her. And that's when she'd come out of the nursing home. She was in there for about 8 months, I think.
Mm.
And she talked with me about her situation, and I left. And then I got another call. She wants to see you again, so I went back. And then she said, I'm going to die on Tuesday. This is a Sunday. So I said, really? You should never argue. Oh, all right. And she said, and I want you to do my funeral. Really? Okay. So we talked briefly, and I left. I got a call at 11 o'clock that night. She needs to see you. So I belt over to northeast Philadelphia. And she's there. She threw everybody out of the room, and she said, come closer, I need to talk with you. First of all, with the funeral, I don't want my brother to talk because he never shuts up, and I don't want to sit there. I'm doing family therapy.
She's going through details. Oh boy.
So she said, come closer. So I got close. Anyway, long story short, I ended up in the bed with her.
Oh.
And she said, I need to tell you something. And I said, look, I'm not a priest. I don't do confessions. No. She said, I need to tell you. Okay. So did you hear the one about the woman who died? She's telling me a joke. So I looked at her and she said,
oh no.
You've heard it, haven't you? And I said, no. So she tells me this joke, and she died on Tuesday.
Get out.
And so she was Jewish, so within 24 hours.
Right,
So,
yeah.
So there was a young rabbi there, and I was there. So I did exactly what I just did. I told everybody this story and the joke. Do you want to hear the joke?
I do.
It's the only one I remember.
Okay.
All right, so this woman had been very ill, and she died, and she went to heaven, and St. Peter met her at the gate. And he said, welcome, why are you here? And she said, well, I was very ill, and there was no hope. Oh. She looked over his shoulder, and this beautiful place. And she said, what's that? And he said, that's heaven. Well, how do I get in? Well, you have to spell a word. And the word is love. L-O-V-E, in she goes. She gets a call 6 weeks later from St. Peter. St. Peter said, I have to go to a conference, can you mind the gate? So she,
All right.
she goes and minds the gate. And all these people come up and they look, you know, love. All of a sudden, who shows up but her husband? She said, what are you doing here? He said, well, you know, after you died, I married that cute little nurse that took care of you.
Oh.
And I never liked the house we lived in, so I got rid of it, and we got a mansion. We travelled all over the world. What are you doing here? He said, well, I was skiing in Switzerland and I went into a tree. What's that over there? Oh, that's heaven. Well, how do you get in? We have to spread a word. Okay, what's the word? Czechoslovakia. I can't spell Czechoslovakia.
Right.
And I'm telling
for
you
her.
this in a funeral home, and they're in hysterics, because that's my belief with funerals. That's who she was.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go all
That's great.
morbid. That's who she was. So that's my Rosalie story.
Well, that is a wonderful story. I love that joke. Well, oh, so wrapping it up, I just want to thank you so much, Dr. Yvonne Kaye, for joining me today.
I'm very honoured to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're at Dancing Timbers. Thank you, Miss Kim behind the camera. And that's all for Living It Up, Making Life Juicy. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Great.
That was lovely.
Yay, thank you.
I haven't heard that story.
That's pretty awesome.
When I start to tell a joke, my children whine.